I am up to here with digital everything. I have been a digital creator since the late 1990s. So the fact that the digital explosion is really putting a lot of pressure on me right now says something about what's going on in the world. I'm Candice Ridardi. This is Gratitude Geek, and I am super excited to talk to Kelsey Green today about digital minimalism. Welcome, Kelsey.
Hey, Candice. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So tell the audience about you.
Absolutely. My name is Kelsey Green. My handle is usually Kelsey L. Green online, and I would consider myself on the journey of digital minimalism. So that I know we'll talk about what that means later in the episode, but I consider myself to be on that path. And I got there similar to how many people get there, which is being fully immersed in all the tech, all the platforms, no boundaries on, when people can call me, text me, when I'll respond, email, notifications, utilizing all the tech nonstop, and just reached total burnout. And also realized that I was not able to focus and get anything done anymore. I thought I had ADHD. I thought there was literally something wrong with my brain. And through the last, couple years researching, learning about this, I have realized that the influx of all this new tech and all the digital platforms and the way we interact with them is really affecting our mental health, our relationships, our ability to produce, and just our overall quality of life.
You just said something that I've never heard before, but makes total sense. ADHD versus digital overload. Please dig into that.
Yes, absolutely. I will give a disclaimer that I am not a mental health professional, but I have noticed that a lot of my women friends, so this is anecdotal, but a lot of my friends were and have been, diagnosed or diagnosed themselves with ADHD. And some of them may have this, absolutely not making a diagnosis there. But one of the things that I have been trying to experiment with for myself is, could my digital use have something to do with the fact that I cannot focus or get anything done? Because, I have a master's degree, I have an undergrad, I have my own business, I'm a writer, I was able to produce things, and it seems that over time I'm able to do less without having to have something happening in the background, reaching for my phone, having something on over here. And so I just started to experiment with that for myself.
What does digital minimalism actually look like?
I love this question because I think this can be a scary term for people. So I'll just, before I forget, point out an amazing resource. This is Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism. And in this, he really outlines the philosophy, which is not, let's throw our phones into the river, let's stomp on our computers, never use a tech. I don't even think that's possible anymore. I'm not even sure
it's impossible.
Take a flight without a digital boarding pass. And, we pay with our watches and QR codes, all this stuff, right? So it's not suggesting that. The main premise is the technology that you're using and the way that you are using it supporting your core values, or is it subverting them? Is it making your life better objectively or making your life worse? That's really the core premise there. And basically, once you go through that assessment period, anything that you invite into your life, technology-wise, needs to really be serving you. You are not serving it.
Over the last year, I have scaled back my social media footprint. Like there's only 3 social media platforms. Only 3. There's only 3 social media platforms that I engage in, and it has been liberating.
How many did you have before?
All of them.
Wow.
I teach marketing, and social media marketing is part of that.
Sure.
But it's not important anymore, I don't think. I mean, one of the reasons why I created the Gratitude Geek Lab, which is the community built around the podcast, and I built it on the Heartbeat platform is because I didn't want someone to have to go on a social media platform to have community, to talk to other people who think the way that they think, and they're learning the same kinds of things that they want to learn. And it's a difficult shift for a lot of people because they're like, well, everything's on Facebook. Well, no, not everything's on Facebook. And there's actually, when you're on Facebook too much, you're being in, I don't want to go down politics, but there's just too much of it. There's too much of it, right? So I created a new digital platform, right? So that I could help people get off of other digital platforms.
Yeah.
And it just seems like the solutions are all digital based.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's fine. It's, it would be so neat if there were other options and we all lived within proximity of each other and we could all gather and, and not have to use social media at all. Okay, that'd be great, right? But that's not the case. And it's funny because people do point this out. I run these screen-free Sunday challenges, and of course, a lot of that information is going out over email. People are signing up, finding out about it over social media, and inevitably it always comes up, oh, haha, like, isn't that ironic that you're talking about this on social media? Well, no, like, I get it, but the point is, again, to utilize the platforms for, your highest good. And if your core value, for example, is community, connecting people, helping people. Great. Utilize the platform for that, right? That's wonderful. Yeah. I think that's perfect. That's a perfect use of it. The issue comes when you say, well, I'm doing this business, my business is almost fully online too. I think most people I talk to, we all have online businesses these days. And so the issue is when you say, oh, but I've got a business online. So that means I have no boundaries with my digital use because, I've got a business. And I think that's where it becomes super problematic because it's, you can justify it all kinds of ways, but when it's tied to revenue or your business, it's very easy to justify, can be very sneaky. And that's something I think we should really examine.
This is the Gratitude Geek podcast. So how do you incorporate gratitude into your business?
Oh, this is a great question. Well, I have a ring that says gratitude on it to remember that it is a real privilege and an honor to be able to serve the people that I serve, to be able to do this work, to have my own business truly. And I try to acknowledge the privilege that I have to be able to do this work. And I just love all my clients. I like say all the gratitudes out loud to my clients because it's truly just so neat to be able to work with people in this way.
In my neighborhood, we have these every 6 months ago or so, we have these ladies' luncheons where the women in the neighborhood get together for lunch. And we email and text each other. But inevitably, I'm getting messages, well, have you met your new neighbor at this house over here? And I'm like, we don't even knock on people's doors anymore. Yeah. So in order to meet your new neighbors, if you see them when you're outside and they're outside, you go, hey, don't you live over here?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about our ladies' luncheons. Right? Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, whenever I say to one of my new neighbors, hey, we get together, just the women, their eyes light up. What? Yeah. You mean I can leave my house and go over to somebody else's house? Their eyes because it's not, everything is online now.
Yeah. It's wild. And I think this is I know you're telling a fun story, but this is a really good point that we are losing. I truly believe the fabric of humanity being that we are interacting and having embodied experiences, meaning a body and another body, right? In all kinds of different variations. And what you're describing, I mean, I presume some of these neighbors are your actual, they're like friends. You'd consider them close friends or acquaintances or whatever.
Well,
but there's
we didn't even know each other before we started doing this luncheon thing.
Right. And then there's also just the weak ties, which might be all the other neighbors who aren't coming to your luncheon, or the people that you see at the grocery store or the coffee shop or whatever. And this used to be the people that we would interact with daily. Mm-hmm. You have your family and your friends and then you have everybody else too. And these are all really important relationships, right? And of course, as we've seen, now we are on our phones, mm-hmm. Out in public and not getting that practice I think it's really a skill, not getting that practice of talking to strangers. I think this is one of the reasons we're having a little bit of a tough time in the world right now with, disagreeing
Yeah,
on
but it's
certain
because
things.
we don't know
Yeah,
how to talk to each other face to face.
right.
This so I'm sure I've told this story on the show before, but I'm going to share it again. I'm a gamer. I like to play video games. See, my digital footprint is so large. I play video games. I host a podcast. I'm a digital marketing pioneer. I mean, but I can feel it that we just need to pull back. We don't need to have as much. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
not the story. The story is I play video games, and many years ago, more than a decade ago, I was playing a game with a dude on a regular basis. We were in the same clan, and his wife was also in the clan, and he was just gross. He was nasty. He
Hmm.
was he was mean, he was just not a pleasant person, right? And I asked his wife about it. I says, "Why is he this way?" And she goes, "He's not like that in person."
Right.
It's like the digital
Mhm.
boundary separate what you just said, what he embodied online and what he embodied in person are not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a problem, and it's actually a big problem, especially for young people. And there's a great book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. It is such an incredible book for parents, but honestly for anybody. It really lays out the data around what this is doing to our brains and what it's doing to our social skills. But, for you and me, we grew up and without these devices, without cell phones, and so we had some more practice. Young people these days have never learned these skills of how to interact with each other. So we see things like, there's less friendship in person, there's less dating happening. And meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of really horrible shit happening online that young people should never be exposed to. And this isn't necessarily a rabbit hole I'm trying to go down with your listeners, but I will just say one of the pieces that really hit me in the feels in that book was Jonathan Haidt, again, having researched this for a ton of years, basically said that the minute you give your child a smartphone, their childhood is over. No matter what kind of parental controls you put on the phone, these days it would take just so little to get around those. Kids are smart, and then it's kind of over from there. And so again, just read the book, but it's heartbreaking what's happening, especially to young girls with mental health and the struggles that we already all had, growing up, just completely compounded by the devices these days.
You just got me in the feels too. So how do we create those boundaries? I mean, what are some practical ways that we can create boundaries around our digital footprint?
Yes. Great question. Thank you. So I will just come out of the gate and say, I don't want to lie to anybody that this may feel challenging at first. It really might. It's similar, the way that these devices interact with our brains is similar to sugar, alcohol, drugs, whatever kind of addicty shit,
Yeah,
you've
you get a
experienced.
major hit of dopamine when,
Yeah,
you see, oh, I got 3 likes. Ooh, dopamine. You know?
totally. Yes. So, understanding that, everyone can just give themselves a little bit of grace when they're trying to set these boundaries because it's probably going to be pretty tough. So, here's what I recommend. I believe that, to the most extent that you can. So, of course, um, we all have different life situations. Some people are caring for aging parents or children. You literally might be on call for your job. I get that, but uh, as much as you can, trying to take the notifications off of your phone. Do you need Wordle to be pinging you 3 times a day to do your Wordle? Do you really need any of any of the social media apps pinging you for anything, even if you're a content creator? I don't think so. Um, the really nice thing about most phones these days is that, of course, you can have certain people break through. You can have them ring through, but everyone else is silenced. You can set up all kinds of things, but just work on just, kind of curating your experience throughout the day for things you really don't need notifications on for.
What I'm hearing from you is that I need to learn how to use my phone better.
There's a lot of cool things you can do.
There's this button on my phone that turns off the sound, and I just always have it off, so I never hear anything. Which also means
that's great. Yeah, I do too. So I think that's wonderful. A lot of people don't have that. And, it's really sad because there's this study that I read it's an academic paper called The Brain Drain. And it shows that if your phone is visible, even face down, or if someone else's phone is visible, even face down, your attention is more fractured. So
really,
even if it, feels like, well, our phones are face down or we're connecting over coffee, whatever, your brains are both registering that phone because you're so used to interacting with it, getting information from it, engaging with it, whatever. Same if you're trying to produce something or create something. Your phone is next to you. Your brain just can't help but wonder what is happening, in that little box. So the next piece of advice is to put your phone out of sight. My favorite two spots are on top of my fridge and inside my closet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I am Gen X, which means that when I went to work, I had a phone on my desk. And that's a total shift. Not having your phone when you're working is a shift in thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you truly do clients need to be able to reach you and you need to
That's
answer.
another story. Yeah.
That I get that, but these days a lot of times it doesn't need to happen that exactly that way. And I was thinking about this too, because a landline would ring and and you would answer it most of the time, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is the landline wouldn't also go out with you every single other place that you went.
And it didn't have video games and it didn't have social media.
Right. It wasn't like we all started being obsessed with our landlines and hanging out with it instead of people, and ignoring our partners or whatever because we had this landline next to us.
Okay. Again, I'm Gen X. So when I was 15 years old, I would be on the phone and I'd take my 50-foot cord that was attached to the wall and I'd go outside, close the sliding glass door and go outside and talk to my friends.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but it's not, again, no video games, no social media.
Yeah.
It is the device, this device here is not the same as the phone that was hanging on our walls. Right. And I think that for people of a certain age, we need to separate. This is a computer.
Right.
That just happens to also be a phone. Yeah. And that's not what we had before. So I think that's one of those ways to create that boundary. Yeah. Is to realize that what we have in our hand today is not the same thing that we had when we were 15 and chatting to our best friend for 3 hours on the phone while our dad said, hang up the phone.
Yeah. And, I think I remember that kind of thing too. And I think that was a special time actually. But then you also met up with that friend in person, presumably, and yeah. And one of the things, just a little bit of a tangent, but in terms of leveraging and utilizing the tech, here's the concept that I like to discuss is how do we use a thing as a tool, right? How do we know if it's a tool? So, people talk about, well, how, utilizing these platforms and we're on here, you and I are connecting on here. Okay. It's like if you have a hammer, you need a hammer to build a house, right? Yes, correct. That's great. And the issue is really when you start to obsess over the hammer and spend more time with the hammer than your friends and only look at the hammer, and the hammer's kind of stopping you from doing the other stuff in your life. You may be able to build the house, but you're also isolated, getting unhealthier, and your mental health is declining because the hammer's in your life. You're going to bed with the hammer, right?
Let's just talk about the hammer for a minute.
Yeah.
A hammer is a great tool when you need to nail something in or remove a nail. Yeah. But if you're using a screw, the hammer is not the best tool. Yeah. Right? You need the screwdriver for the screw. If it's a bolt, you need the ratchet thing, right? So you've got to have the right tool for the job. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're addicted to the hammer and what you really need is a ratchet, you got a serious problem.
Yeah,
This is a great
exactly.
analogy. Thank you, Kelsey.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for taking it there. Yeah, I often don't talk about all these other tools, but yeah, exactly. So the point is really, I think we've made it clear. The point is to leverage the really cool things about the tool and utilize it for what it's really good at, and then remember all the other things that exist, all the other tools and the whole rest of the world out there. Really, the hammer should play like this little part, right, in your day.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we've covered two,
Yeah.
and I think you said you had three. So what was the third one?
Well, the other thing is this is not gonna be news to anyone. By this point in time, I think people have have heard a lot of this already, but this one's pretty critical, and that is your quality of sleep. And I have gone on a wild journey of trying to address my sleep because I used to be an insomniac and I sort of used to wear it as this badge of honor, and I was a mess. I was a zombie. And there's all kinds of reasons for this, but in recent years, one is that I would be looking at my phone in bed, I'd be scrolling, be on Netflix, and we know that that light is just terrible for us for sleep, right? So, really, it is trying to push back how long you can be off of your phone at night before you go to sleep. Not exciting news for anyone, but also in the morning. So I'm not trying to convince anyone to do some kind of 20-step morning ritual, but waiting to get on your phone, until you really, really need to get on your phone in the morning, I think is so valuable for the way that your brain is conceptualizing your day, the way you're setting yourself up, and the way that you can prepare for your day without already feeling like you're out of control.
So what you're saying is don't fall asleep with your phone on your face
Yeah.
because it fell down out of your hand.
Sure. Yeah.
The so I mean I read on my phone, so I have apps on my phone to read books because who can touch paper anymore. Um, so what you're saying is I need to start buying paperback books again.
Yeah, or go to the library. Yeah, I hear you. The thing is, I know Kindles are so cool, for traveling, they're so light, etc. And I have no plans to ever have a Kindle. I love books. I love the feel of them, the tangible nature of them. And honestly, in this way and a lot of other ways, I'm trying to go backwards, go a little more analog as much as I can. I have a full focus planner that's a paper planner. I also have a digital calendar because, of course, I have the same tools that everyone else does, the Calendly scheduling tools, and I have to reconcile those. That's a little bit of a pain. But when I'm out and about and I need to think about something, do something, I can write it down on my planner and I don't have to be on my phone. So, as many ways as I can reintegrate the analog into my day, I really do.
Well, and there is some magic to writing. I
Yeah.
actually use
Nice.
what are they called? What are these called?
A notepad?
Stenopads. They're
Okay.
called stenopads, and this is my daily planner.
Yeah.
I don't have I don't use it to write down appointments, but it's how I plan my days. Because I just the act of checking things off and whatnot, and then we have a calendar. It's in our hallway. In our hallway, we put a 4-month calendar that's erasable,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
we just put our family events on the calendar so everybody can always see them instead of
Yeah.
using like a Google calendar.
Right. That's
So,
great. I love that.
and then it's the act of sharing, and it's really easy to look at, and but still, when you're out and about, it's hard to. Do I put a planner in my purse? I guess you could. I
I
mean,
do. I
you can
do.
get
Yeah.
little ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow. So going old school is a good fix. We talked about 3 boundaries. What do we do when we reclaim all this time back
Mm.
after we've gone minimal? What do we do with our time after that?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. Well, I believe that producing something from the heart, not to be too cheesy about it or woo, but our creative force, our creative energies, hobbies we could have, basically the things that we are doing in our free time. Essentially, recently, we have stopped doing certain things and we've given that time over to scrolling, streaming, etc. The problem is that our brains don't register this as rest. And I know this as much as anyone. Sometimes I'm so tired and exhausted. My brain feels fried. I just want to zonk out and watch some Netflix, scroll Instagram, whatever. The issue is our brain is still working pretty hard to track and register what's going on. There's so many things happening more and more every year. Things are just getting just faster and lots more inputs for our brains. This is actually not restful. It also doesn't help us feel inside like we are creating, we are doing something useful. And one of the things that Cal Newport talks about is replacing scrolly, streamy time with high quality hobbies. And these are usually things that you're doing with your hands. So that can be baking, gardening, woodworking, even if you're kind of organizing your house, making a beautiful space, knitting, all these kinds of things that you do that you could see an output, even if you just, you know, take it out and redo it or whatever, versus just kind of trying to zonk out and scroll and stream. And the other thing is I believe fully in big projects, whether it takes 5 years or 10 years or 5 months, or which doesn't even matter. But, doing something like writing a book or doing a collaborative project with friends and family, just these things that you can see at the end, you have something. It can be completely just for yourself, but working towards something. I think these are the things that we're missing, and we're missing out on a sense of fulfillment, in a sense that we're doing something really interesting in our lives.
I keep thinking about that not movie, that book, Outlander, the time travel book. You know
Mhm.
about Outlander?
I've read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. I read I read one of the books during a hurricane. We had 6 days with no power. For 6 days, I read a book. It was a
Awesome.
big book. But,
Yeah.
so basically what I'm saying is, what did we do before we had electricity, before we had phones, before we had TV, before we had radio? What did we do? We
Mhm.
gardened, we crocheted, we knit, we cooked, we baked. I mean, the act of baking took a
Mhm.
whole day because you're baking for the week, right? But you hunt, you knew how to dress your meat. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that you had to do. There wasn't time.
Yeah.
There wasn't time for leisure. All the things that you were doing were required and necessary to live.
Yes, and I will point out that I believe that people were quite busy, and they also were okay to just sit there. And what we think of as like extreme boredom, where we're just going to lose our shit, people were fine doing this. They were fine sitting there contemplating the fire,
Mm-hmm.
having a cup of tea, looking at the wall. I swear my grandma would just kind of stare at the wall, and she's doing something important in her mind, which is just working through her feelings, her emotions, processing. And these days, the thought of sitting down for, I swear, even 10 minutes and just being quiet with no music, even, people always think they have to have music in the background. Nope, just silence, is a literal skill that we are losing. And it is actually important.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that they did before we had all the electricity, radio, TV, was they talked to each other
Yeah.
with words, face to face, which meant you had to, and we talked about this at the beginning, but you had to actually know how to communicate and how to have a conversation and
Yeah.
have space to allow other people's opinions and views, not to create conflict. I mean, there wouldn't be anybody alive if 300 years ago people just, if they didn't agree with each other, they acted the way we
Right.
act now.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like the way that we're, treating each other online, if that were happening in real life and we were just
Yeah.
murdering each other, then yeah, you're right. We would just
Yeah.
extinct. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So learning how to be nice to each other again, that's a, Why is it so hard? Why is being nice so difficult? Why can't you just be nice? And that's a rhetorical question.
Yeah. But I do think, just to just comment on this, I think it's an important point, actually. We are losing the ability to feel discomfort when we are sitting across from someone and we can't control what's going to happen. It's a much more rich and interesting experience, for better or worse, being in person. And this is a skill that I do think we need to rebuild. So I have a course where I teach people actually go out in the world and like talk to people again, and it's like just sometimes it's like not that great, you know? But that's great. That's good for us to remember what it's like to be humans in these embodied experiences.
Mhm. Yeah, and the act of, when you're standing in line at the grocery store and actually talking to the person in line in front of you or behind you, we can do that, that's okay. You can say
Yeah.
hello. How you
Yeah.
doing? You can have a conversation. I actually was standing in line to return something at a Walmart and had and it was Walmart, so the line was slow and long. And I got that woman's life story and it was fascinating. She had an
Yeah.
amazing story and I was so grateful that I had said hello to
Mhm.
her,
Yeah.
because I got to hear this amazing story about this really rich, wonderful life.
Yeah, definitely. And I bet it meant something to her to be able to share it, connect with somebody. Maybe she didn't have a lot of people to connect with, at that time. Yeah, the other day I was in line at a coffee shop and this lovely young woman, so young. So I feel heartened because I feel like some young people are starting to catch on. No phone in sight. She turned around and just asked, like, "How's your day going? What are you doing here?" And at first, I was totally taken aback, like, "Whoa, oh, why is this stranger talking to me?" And we had this nice little chat, and it just the experience of standing in line for 10 minutes was so different, chatting
Mhm.
with this lovely young woman versus just scrolling, nothing on my phone.
And it's amazing how much you can learn about somebody in 10 minutes, you
Yeah,
know?
and I would say also learn about yourself too, just in the way that we're showing up and how to do it still.
Mhm. Mhm. Let's talk about self-accountability because you like to help people learn how to be accountable to themselves. What does that mean?
Yes. Well, accountability can be a triggering word for some people, maybe from school or work, and I absolutely understand that. And I do coaching and I have coaches and I love accountability, but the ultimate goal is to be accountable to oneself. So you don't need, to pay someone to ask you if you did the thing you said you're going to do, right? You have learned to be accountable to yourself. But that is a process sometimes. So we learn how to be accountable to our calendars, especially if you are running your own business. Of course, you might be accountable to a boss when you transition. A lot of people transition like, "Oh, you know, I actually only worked 45 minutes today. Wow." So learning to be accountable to your calendar, to yourself, this is a process.
In my opinion, if you can get a day's worth of work done in 45 minutes, go reclaim that other 7 hours. They're
Absolutely.
yours. So I actually interviewed and I can't remember who it was who said this, but it's true. She said that accountability coaching is unethical.
Hmm.
And I was a little taken aback by it, but the reasoning is because we're not being accountable to ourselves when somebody
Yeah.
else is holding us accountable.
Yeah.
And so then we never learn how to be
Yes.
accountable to ourselves because we're relying on somebody else to keep us accountable.
Wow. I love this. This is great. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree necessarily.
I believe it was Kim Addis who said that. That was episode 229. So I'll link that in the show notes. And if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, the correct link will be in the show notes.
Yeah. But to her point, yes, I agree that I actually saw this posting the other day of a woman who wanted a coach I'll say that in quotations, that would call her every single morning, call her phone, that she had on ringer, mode, loud, I presume, until she woke up, and sometimes that might take an hour, and stay with her on the phone until she got up and went to the kitchen and drank her first glass of water every single day. And this was so fascinating because that woman does not need a human alarm clock to make her get up every single day. This woman needs to learn a whole different way to exist and live life, in my opinion. Because this is not, I mean, this is sustainable for someone if you might have money, but what a terrible way to live where you can never get yourself up out of bed in time.
I keep thinking about Coming to America, the scene where they're asking for the official wiper. Wiper. Where's the royal wiper? You know what I'm talking about? Do you know what
No.
scene I'm talking about? Like he couldn't even wipe his own hiney after he went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That's what that made me think of.
Yeah. Bless. Yeah. So I agree with the person that you just referenced that if accountability only means that there's someone hovering above you making you do what you want to do for yourself, that's a terrible way to live. And I would actually maybe agree with her that's a bit unethical. So I have a program, it's a 6-month program that we do start out accountable to each other, and we've got a tracking sheet. And then over time, it's a little bit of a sly move here. Over time, we do a couple things. I talk about digital boundaries, shocker. And then we also look at how to shift from being accountable to the group and me to being accountable to oneself, to themselves in the group.
And how many people resist that? When, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think we all, I don't know about you, maybe you've got it on lockdown, but I think it's a daily struggle for all of us to be accountable, because I think for me personally, I'm always trying to up level. So I get everything done I say that I'm going to do, but whether it's cleanly, like I have a big task and I can just focus, knock it out, and then like you said, get the frick off the computer and go do something else. Great. Or if and like stuck in drama mode in my head, and it's tough and I'm having all this, that's the kind of stuff I'm trying to work on now, is just without drama, getting in there, getting it done, and moving on.
Done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us just get held up on it's not quite the right color. I don't like the way this looks
Oh,
here. Whatever. Just finish it. But back to what I said before, if you can get a day's worth of work done in an hour, do it. I mean, that's the one thing that I'm so grateful that I don't have to work in corporate America anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because in corporate America, you work hours instead of projects.
Right.
But if you can get the project done quickly, you should still be paid for the project, not the hours, right? I got everything done. I'm getting my day's pay, even if you're on salary. I got it done. What I needed to get done is done. I'm leaving now, right? If we just shifted to that kind of thinking, I think it would solve a lot. And then the people who are slower, they're slower.
I totally agree. I love this idea because this is one of the things I care about in terms of digital minimalism, to set the boundaries, get the stuff done in as little time as possible. And that also, I think, at least for the people I work with and myself, depends on how much, especially when you start doing vulnerable work, if you have a personal brand, you start writing, things like that, it's tough. And so you've got to work through that and you got to get it done. And the less time we can spend doing that, truly, I believe, the better. And then in corporate America, let's say, those people that get stuff done, let's say, and then they were allowed to leave, then they would probably have more time for the relationships, more time for sleep, more time for self-care. They'd probably do a better job at their role.
Oh, if you want to get the best work out of people, give them that flexibility.
Yeah.
Don't force them to do things that aren't necessary to do. But this podcast isn't for people who work at a traditional job. This podcast is for solopreneur women. So I want to talk about the vulnerability of a personal brand. A couple of years ago, I was sharing with someone that I networked with that his wife had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I've been living with metastatic breast cancer for 12 years, 13 years, something like that. And he was asking me questions. And I said, well, one of the things that may come up is, mental health. I did have a little bit of depression for a while, and I was on depression meds for a little bit. And, I said, I think I need to be more open about that. I think I need to tell more people about that. And he goes, why? He goes, why? You don't need to tell that to people. So there is still there's a line a fine
Mhm.
line between what you should reveal, what you can reveal, and what you shouldn't reveal. And I think it's subjective. It depends on the person. But
Mhm.
sometimes I think we share too much.
Oof, yeah, this is a bit of a nuanced topic, but I will note that when I was first starting down my own path, dealing with my own trauma, and I heard podcasts changed my life truly. And that's for a couple different reasons, but one reason is that I heard a woman talk about her sexual assault just very calmly. You know, she didn't go into great detail, but she talked about that had happened and that she had worked through it and now she's in a different place. And I was so blown away that she would say those words on a podcast, which of course we know, the words can never go away after that, whatever. And it was so shocking, but it was so encouraging because she could just state it plainly. And it made me think if she is able to get to that point, then maybe I could too, where I could be, let's say, a functional human. And that was a really turning point for me,
And it took her a long time to get to that point.
probably.
She had probably years where she couldn't talk about it at all,
Right.
and there are people who never talk about it.
Yeah. And so I guess I like the adage of sharing your scars, not your open bloody wounds, and I don't really share tons of stuff on social media, right? But I believe strongly for the marketers out there. I believe in the email list. That's my jam. I used to have a real resistance to it because of the writing. And then, I went down the chat GPT rabbit hole like everyone else. Then it was just goopity, sloppity garbage. And so now I'm back to this any of my copy. I'm actually flushing out all the chat GPT shit. I want all the copy to be my copy from my heart, and I love the email list because people can unsubscribe and they don't have to get it. But I feel like there is more of that connection in there.
My big aversion is writing. I can talk all day long. That's why I have a podcast.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I have a podcast because I can
Mhm.
talk.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we don't all possess, the skills for every single different medium, of course, right? Like, yeah, you're a great host, and I can understand for sure.
Thank you. But the thing is, there is a tool that can transcribe what you say,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's still your words,
totally.
right? It's still your words.
Yes.
So let's talk about the scar versus open wound, because I think the oversharing is when the wound is open.
Mhm.
Like, you don't need to be talking about the divorce that you're going through right now and laying everything out in the open for everybody online to read, right?
Yeah,
However, 4 years from now, if you want to share, here's 3 things I learned going through my divorce,
yeah,
every woman going through divorce would appreciate those 3 things.
yeah,
But we don't
absolutely.
need to see, this is what he did today,
Ugh,
this is what I did back, right? We don't need to know those little details. I love that. Share your
yeah.
scars, not your open wounds.
I think that's a good approach, and yeah, I actually went through a pretty awful breakup about a year and a half ago, and I was like, "Am I still in is it like a fully formed scar yet? Can I show? Oh, it might still be a little open. I'm just gonna wait on that." you
Oh,
know?
and that's a good way that's a good question to ask yourself. Is
Mhm.
this still an open wound?
Yeah,
Should I wait?
yeah.
You
But I'll
know?
be I'll be honest, if we're talking about content, I also think it's really up to the consumer of content to heavily curate their own content intake. So for me these days, I don't have Instagram on my phone. I get on the desktop a little bit and I obviously have to download the freaking app to post in certain ways to stories, and thanks Meta. Like you got me there, okay? But and I'm sure I could figure out a workaround, whatever. But I my feed is so heavily curated that I don't even think I would have content like that coming in. And so it's also just about like there's all kinds of gross shit out there, and it's really up to you to put boundaries around what kind of content you consume, how much. And I'll just say something actually really important we didn't cover earlier for content creators out there, that one really neat way to look at, conceptualize how much time you're spending and boundaries is how much are you creating versus how much are you consuming? And consuming means even, I know you and I love podcasts, but even podcasts, right? TV shows, all of this content, someone else's creation, whatever that is, even music, how much of that are you letting come in and how much are you creating? And by creating, I don't mean more content all the time. I mean some of the things we talked about earlier, right? Creating things in your life, visioning for your future, creating habits, whatever it is, or some of those high quality hobbies, writing the damn book, launching your podcast, whatever it is. And can you just work to create more than you can consume?
I need to push back on that though, because reading is consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no way that we can write more than we read.
Well, sure, but that's what I'm saying, that you have a diverse array of things that you're creating. But I would stick to that. Yeah. I think we should be working on our own lives more than we're taking in other people's creation.
And you can argue that reading is working on your own life because we read to make ourselves better, to make ourselves smarter, to learn new things. And that helps us grow. At least I hope that's why we're reading.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with that statement. But I also think that there's a very clever way to trap yourself into a state where you're doing the reading, you're listening to the podcasts, you're doing the challenges, you're like,
but you're never creating.
Right. You're never implementing.
Yeah. And that's procrastination.
Yeah.
That's procrastination through education.
It's a fancy way to procrastinate.
Yeah. It's whose advice would you rather follow? The person at the gym who's bench pressing 220 pounds or the person who read the book about bench pressing 220 pounds?
Yeah.
You would want to learn from the person bench pressing the 220 pounds. That is from a podcast that I listened to yesterday, by the way.
Nice. Or the person bench pressing anything. The person that's just got themselves to the gym. They don't have to be, the best or 200, they can just be like, hey, I'm actually just learning this. It's intimidating for me. This is just me recently. So that's why I'm like, I like this example a lot. I was new to the gym. I did not like it. I didn't like the bros. I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
But I've been hearing more about, it's important for women to lift, to weight, blah, blah, whatever. So, it was uncomfortable and terrible and I hated it. But am I going to keep doing it? Yes. So anyway, I just mean, even if you're you're terrible at it, you're a beginner, this is still, that's the person, that you want to be or look up to or whatever.
I want to share, along the lines of asking the guy at the gym. So the other day I was at the farmer's market and Hassan is this wonderful guy who makes, he sells hummus, right? And I was asking him about the tahini and the hummus because I like to cook. So I was asking him about the tahini. I was like, why is it the tahini that I buy for hummus is never runny like I see in the videos? And he was telling me what to do, right? But here he is selling hummus, but he was very willing to tell me what to buy so I could make it myself and how to make it myself. But that is true for everybody. Everybody wants to share with you how to do something. If you ask a genuine question, they're going to tell you. Every once in a while somebody says, oh, I'm not going to share that. That's my secret ingredient. But most of the time, when you want to learn something new, you don't have to watch a video. You can just ask somebody who already knows how to do it. And people want to teach.
Yeah.
They want to teach. So that's along the lines of starting conversations in the grocery line.
Totally.
Like, what are you going to do with all those tomatoes? Why are you buying, 6 pounds of tomatoes? And they're going to tell you, and you go, well, how do you do that? You get them to talk. That's how you start conversations.
Yes.
So,
I love that. And I totally agree. And this is actually one of the strategies I encourage people to employ if you are learning how to do small talk or relearning, like a lot of us are. Totally cool. Especially, obviously, COVID didn't do us.
So you teach people how to do small talk?
Yeah.
We didn't even get to that part.
Yeah, because it's, COVID messed us all up. And also it's a skill that actually takes quite a bit of, learning and practice. And so I'll just give a quick tip right now, because this is a key one I see a lot, is to be interested versus interesting. So we always want people to like us. And so we're always talking about ourselves. It's a little funny because I'm a guest and that's like, what we're doing here. But it's, when you're in a regular interaction, how interested can you be in somebody else and learning about them? And I love what you said, because if you get stuck and you're not sure where to go, figure out what you might be able to learn from them with the things that are in your immediate environment, like the hummus, or if it's, I say go to the store, like a fancy store where they've got great, people helping, and ask them some interesting questions like, what's your favorite product in this line? Or what time is the store the busiest? Whatever. Just practice asking questions and really try to listen to the answer. And, the like, what's that old adage? The listen twice as much as you speak, because you've got two ears and one mouth. If you can shoot for that, that's a great way to go about things. The way that relationships crumble pretty quickly is only talking about oneself, right?
That's a great place to end it. So, Kelsey, how do people get a hold of you?
Yes, my website is kelseylgreen.com. Same handle on Instagram. If you're interested in trying out some digital boundaries, I run no-cost screen-free Sunday challenges, just like it sounds, 24 hours, no screens. And this is really illuminating, so I encourage everyone to try it out.
Does that include TV?
Yeah, but you can read books. And there's a next level one that I also run that is 36 hours, no inputs of other people's ideas, no books. I actually cover up the clocks in my house. So no other ideas coming in, no reading. And then obviously no screens, no music. And that's a trip. So
Wow.
you can keep practicing this kind of stuff.
That 36 hours is a long time of being with yourself. Well,
and you don't even have to be by yourself. You can be with others. It's just, but it is interesting to do it in solitude, because the things that come up in your mind when you don't have all these other things to put into it.
Kelsey Green, this is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
I don't know about most grateful, to be honest. Every morning before I get out of bed, I try to say, 5 before my feet hit the floor, 5 things I'm grateful for. And I try to run through 5, and those vary each day, but just the opportunity to be here, be alive, and honestly have interesting discourse with interesting people like we're doing right now is an incredible privilege.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for people who understand that gratitude is absolutely a business strategy. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Stow Lily. I've been your host, Candice Rodarty. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.